The Army now lowering the physical fitness standard for women and older troops who struggle to pass the yearly test.
There have been 3 years of complaints and a high failure rate. Actually, 48% of all active duty women.
The COVID vaccine will be included on the list of medical requirements for service members.
The president's plan is getting mixed reaction, and that includes members of the military who've been seeking legal help to avoid the vaccine.
And if they say I'm making them feel uncomfortable because I'm not being diverse or inclusive, then that someone could report to the purple rope, and then the purple rope would come after me.
Today, there are more than 18 million living veterans in the United States, representing 6% of the population. Our country's military has fought and died for freedom and liberty for our people and countless other nations. But a new enemy threatens our military from within.
Above all, you will have a responsibility to deter war as well as to fight it. Our forces, therefore, must fulfill a broader role as a complement to our diplomacy, as an arm of our diplomacy, as a deterrent to our adversaries, and as a symbol to our adversaries.
In 2023, the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Reserves all missed their recruiting goals. In 2024, the total number of active duty troops is the smallest it's been since 1940. Yet the number of civilian Department of Defense employees is higher than ever. Join us as we seek to uncover, how did we get here?
I relocated to Incirlik, Turkey to support Operation Provide Comfort because Hussein had moved the Kurdish refugees up into the northern Iraqi mountains, and they were starving and freezing. And so we were in there airlifting supplies and food to them. Well, I took a break one afternoon and went down into the little village there right outside the base to buy some trinkets for my family when I finally returned 6 months later. And there was a little boy. He stood in front of me and he was saluting. And you could see his belly button under his shirt. He's barefooted. And I mean, he was just so sincere about it. And there was a gentleman right next to me, and I looked at him, I said, "Sir, do you speak English?" He goes, "Yes, I do." You know, "Why is he saluting me?" And I was in civilian clothes. He said, "Sir, you have the walk of freedom." That really resonated with me. So for our fellow airmen and soldiers and Marines, that's the type of image that we projected in the rest of the world. And it wasn't because we were powerful, had technical superiority, whatever, but I think it emanated a sense of moral character. Moral character. And that's what we're really lacking.
So I've been covering the military for a long time. I first started around 2011 or so, and even actually before that. But I first started covering the Pentagon at around 2011. And around that time, there was a push to get women into combat.
In 2013, the Obama administration announced their plan to lift the ban on women in military combat positions.
General Dempsey and I are pleased to announce that we are eliminating the direct ground combat exclusion rule for women.
After this announcement, the Obama administration commissioned a $36 million study that followed 400 male and female Marines who spent nearly a year in combat exercises.
And for those arguing that women should be able to perform all the same combat jobs as the men, the news is discouraging. In almost every area, the all-male units performed significantly better than those with both men and women Marines. The men were faster in each tactical movement, had better accuracy, and were quicker. They registered more hits on target and had a noticeable difference in their performance of overcoming obstacles and evacuating casualties.
Just 3 months after the Obama Commission study was released, the Obama administration outright rejected the findings of its own study, lifting the ban on women in military combat positions with no exceptions.
I reviewed these inputs carefully, and today I'm announcing my decision not to make continued exceptions. That is, to proceed with opening all these remaining occupations and positions to women.
What I didn't realize at that time was it was more than just getting women in combat. It was about changing society.
When it comes to men and women in combat, look, on the one hand, you have many feminist groups who have pushed for years for women to have access to all military occupational specialties, including the combat arms. I actually support that. In the guise of, at the end of the day, the standard, doesn't matter about all of those other things. I think that's fine. We should open up those combat specialties to women. But what you can't do, and what we see these groups then do, is then loop back around and say, well, wait a minute. Only certain percentages of women are getting through. Only certain percentages of women are being promoted.
And that's exactly what happened. In 2019, the Army updated its physical fitness test. But by 2022, nearly half of active duty women were failing, compared to only 7% of men. How did the Biden-Harris administration's top brass respond, you might ask?
The Army now lowering the physical fitness standard for women and older troops who struggle to pass the yearly test.
There have been 3 years of complaints and a high failure rate, actually 48% of all active duty women. So the change is pretty much an about-face on being gender and age neutral.
So I first joined the military in 2002. I ended up going to the Naval Academy Preparatory School up at Newport, Rhode Island, and then got a commission to go into the United States Naval Academy from 2003 until 2007.
How does it make you feel as a female veteran to see those standards being lowered?
It upsets me. I think I strive to, my goal was to be as fast, as tough as men. And so whether it was running, whatever, pull-ups, whatever it was, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna see that male standard and see if I can work on it. Obviously, I think it takes women a little bit longer, but that's not to say we can't achieve it or be as competitive as them. So when I see the services take this approach of just lowering standards drastically, it's I think, insulting to women. I think it's discouraging and something that really, again, breaks down that unity that really should be at the core of the service.
I have yet to have anybody explain to me how in elite units that by their nature are exclusive, difficult, have incredibly high standards, then how you have an equal outcome for everyone that tries without lowering standards.
So first maybe was, let's get some really badass women through the door, and they're just as tough as men and they can fight like men and they've been in combat. And then now we're at a point today where it's like, we need to accommodate everyone.
Under the Biden-Harris administration, featuring characters like Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, Chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Mark Milley, and his successor, General Charles Q. Brown, Jr., identity-based accommodations spiraled out of control.
Where we're making good progress designing body armor that fits women properly, tailoring combat uniforms for women, creating maternity flight suits, and updating requirements for their hairstyles.
So we've got new hairstyles and maternity flight suits. Pregnant women are going to fight our wars.
Then, the Biden-Harris administration went beyond policies concerning just men and women in combat.
The Trump administration had a policy where they allowed transgender troops to serve as long as they served in their biological sex and was not diagnosed with gender dysphoria.
The Trump administration's nuanced 2019 policy on transgender troops serving in the military was rooted in a 2018 Department of Defense report that found transgender troops suffering higher rates of anxiety and depression, that found that service members with gender dysphoria were more likely to be non-deployable due to medical treatments like surgeries and hormone therapy, which required extensive recovery and regular medical attention, and also found that hormone and transition treatment for transgender troops could cost taxpayers nearly $10 million annually. The Trump-era policy was mischaracterized as a malicious, outright ban on transgender troops, and instead manifested as a policy that cared for the psychological well-being of troops suffering from gender dysphoria, and was a policy that preserved and strengthened military readiness and unit cohesion.
The Biden administration came in and reversed that policy, allowing for transgender persons to enlist and to serve openly.
What I'm doing is enabling all qualified Americans to serve their country in uniform and essentially restoring the situation that existed before with transgender personnel, if qualified in every other way, and serve their government in the United States military.
What began as an effort to boost military recruitment by allowing women to fairly compete for combat roles quickly spiraled into radicals using the military as a platform to experiment with radical identity politics, or as it's come to be known today, wokeness.
We have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke.
It's all woke. It's all woke culture. It's this culture of compliance. They want you to comply.
Wokeness, by the way, has an actual definition, that America is rife with institutional racism, that institutional racism serves the purposes of white supremacy, and that any disparity is evidence of that racism.
What began as an honest effort to give women a fair shot at competing for military combat roles quickly spiraled into a full-scale assault on basic military standards. The mission of our military shifted from winning our wars to achieving diversity, equity, and inclusion on the basis of race, gender, and sexual orientation. It didn't matter if you could pass the physical fitness test. It didn't matter if our troops were sufficiently staffed or prepared for war. What mattered was that our military was not too white and not too male. What mattered was that in the name of DEI, our military stayed woke.
DEI is the antithesis of esprit de corps. It drives a knife into the heart of cohesiveness and unity. And that is what the great military people like Clausewitz and Napoleon taught us, is that unity is the key. Unity is the heart of what makes a combat unit function. And instead, to quote a cadet that this group will meet tonight, what he has called DEI is identity politics on steroids.
DEI is a spin-off of CRT, as we all know, critical race theory, and that is founded basically on Marxism. And what it does is pits groups of people against each other. And in the day, of course, Marx used the economic disparities, haves, nots, to do that. But the modern Marxists, as we know, recognize that that wouldn't work because the economic conditions are fairly decent in the United States. So they look around, what they find? They found race. And so they're using race to divide us, whites against blacks, the oppressed versus the oppressors. And when you have an oppressed class or preach that, then that opens the door for special privileges to make up for that oppression. And that's what we see happening right now. And as you pointed out, that's totally divisive and opposite to what our military is all about, and that is inclusive.
So George Floyd's death and the subsequent riots really turbocharged all woke efforts at the Pentagon.
Our mission extends beyond winning.
Our mission is to stand against racism,
to promote diversity and inclusion.
We aim to tell our country and the world that Black Lives Matter. The Bolt Brotherhood believes Black lives.
That's painful. Look, again, you turn, these videos put out by the, Air Force Academy football team, right? I guess you're turning an institution that is supposed to be about defending this republic, again, that thousands have died to defend. That stuff, I caught it in the middle of it as a coach or one of them that said, we're about something more than winning. I mean, okay, on the football field, that's probably clearly evident in terms of performance sometimes, but the fact is, winning in terms of a military, right? That's your actual job, right? Is to go win and to win and defend this country. Like, there is no room for second place. There is no losing, right? You have to win because everything's at stake.
I think that's one of the most disturbing things I've seen in a long time, but it also, I think it shows how endemic this ideology has become. They're promoting an entity, one, that's shown to have very serious allegations of corruption, but two, that does have communist and Marxist roots. And I'd love to ask these football coaches, how do you achieve equity in an elite football team? How do you give everybody an equal outcome don't they have tryouts? Aren't they seeking to have the best quarterback, the best lineman? It just shows to me how confused the issue is, how people, I think, have good intentions in eliminating racism and providing equal opportunity, how the left's message very cleverly has conflated all of that to where we end up having videos like that.
So you suddenly had this push to change all the base names, from former Confederate generals and, taking down the statues.
Statues have been removed or covered recently. The Marine Corps and Navy effectively banned the Confederate flag. Now there's a new push in Congress to rename 10 Army bases.
Fort Bragg is known for the heroes within it that trained there, that deployed from there, and it's an insult to say to the men and women who left there the last thing they saw on American soil before going overseas, and in some cases losing their lives, to tell them that what they left was inherently a racist institution because of a name. That's unacceptable to the president, and rightfully so.
So you have a lot of different changes because of what happened to George Floyd. You had senior military leaders wanting to be sensitive and wanting to be supportive, and so they really embraced anything that they thought would be supportive for anyone who was upset or affected by the George Floyd death and the riots afterwards.
How did the Air Force football team's Black Lives Matter video support our military's core mission? How did the renaming of military bases or tearing down of statues serve our military's core mission? If the military's core mission is to win our wars, then these acts mean nothing. But what if the military's core mission was covertly repositioned to value diversity, equity, and inclusion on the basis of race? This is the power of the deep state bureaucracy, to covertly replace the military's North Star of keeping Americans safe with that of their own. A North Star of diversity, equity, and inclusion on the basis of race and gender, over all else, no matter the cost. This ideology even seeped into America's global image. Just ask President Trump's former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo.
So, the rage at the moment was Black Lives Matter. We had people painting Black Lives Matter on the streets of Washington, D.C. When I was Secretary of State, I got a phone call saying, hey, there's pictures on TV that they are flying an enormous Black Lives Matter banner from an embassy facility. So we began the effort to figure out what the heck happened, how'd that come to be. And the ambassador, an amazing guy, Harry Harris, a former admiral who I have enormous respect for, was just kind of got caught up, and they said, hey, we want to fly this thing, and who doesn't care about Black lives? No, we all care about Black lives. We care about Hispanic lives, we care about Italian fat guy lives, we care about everybody's life, right? And so we end up with this banner, and of course, I just think he wasn't tracking that this was a Marxist leftist organization that was antithetical to our nation. And so we had to call him and tell him, hey, that's a bad idea, get it taken down.
If you think the woke mind virus hit DC hard, wait until you see how deep it runs in our military academies.
First of all, on the issue of critical race theory, etc., I'll obviously have to get much smarter on whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read. And the United States Military Academy is a university. And it is important that we train and we understand, and I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it.
I have in front of me, the slides on the diversity training and the equity and the inclusion training. And one of the things it talks about in one of your slides is not to recognize people as moms and dads. I mean, as a mother, I take a little bit of offense to that. It also talks about not using the word terrorist.
Wokeism is being taught and enforced at our military institutions. Hear it from the cadets themselves.
I'm a cadet at the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs.
So I'm currently a cadet at the United States Air Force Academy.
We talked with 2 cadets attending the U.S. Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Due to concern of backlash from woke activists and teachers, they asked to remain anonymous.
So looking, wanting to go to a service academy, the big thing was I saw those values at the academy that I kind of enjoyed, and also my personal values of, wanting to protect the freedoms that we hold dear as Americans, those rights to, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, all those different things that we have as Americans that the other nations don't have. All those kind of pointed to me towards wanting to go to an academy.
Growing up, I had always really been taught, just in general, the value of respect, and as a leader, how important that is, and I thought that was more of everybody knew that concept, but now it seems like we have to break that down to people, and we're having briefings about, instead of just oh, everybody respect each other. It's really specific doctrine, it feels like.
When it comes to this talk about diversity, equity, inclusion that's being reported on and people are talking about it, is that something that's talked about on campus? Have you heard about it? Have you experienced trainings or anything like that on campus?
You're talking about on campus, and yes, I have experienced it on campus, but I was actually exposed to it even before I got to the academy. When I went through my appointee or accepted person paperwork to get into the academy, filling all of my acceptance documents.
What were some of the examples of what examples did you come across in those documents that?
Yeah, so the big thing was there was like right on the portal, there was a diversity inclusion training that was mandatory for all new appointees. I was like, oh god, whatever, just some political stuff, I'll go ahead and do it. But when I got into it, it was much more divisive and much more political than I expected it to be. And it was 3 college roommates. One of the roommates was Hispanic, one was African American, the other one was a white person. And the African American and Hispanic were saying, oh, we're gonna go to this Black Lives Matter rally. And they told the white guy, hey, you should come with us. He's like, no, I don't believe in that. I believe that all lives matter. And they told him that he was a racist for saying that, and that's not the right thing to say, and that's just a trigger and things like that. It was taking a political organization like Black Lives Matter and trying to make it that has to be the law of like how things are. And it was just super politically divisive, and quite frankly, I was shocked when I saw it, and I was like, what am I getting myself into at the academy? Like, how much is this gonna continue when I get there?
We obtained the divisive Black Lives Matter training video referenced by the cadet. Here it is in full.
Hey! Hey. So, I know, you said you couldn't make it, but Madison and I really want you to go to the Black Lives Matter chapter meeting with us. Can't I change your mind?
I want to, but I can't. I'm way behind and I really need to study. I have an exam tomorrow.
Professor Freeman is going to be there.
I was hoping to meet them.
Please, Jose, we need you. Don't make us go by ourselves.
Okay.
Cool.
You're coming? Yes! Oh, Jeff, this is Jose, the housemate I was telling you about.
Oh, you're Jose. Yeah. Okay, I was expecting you to be more south of the border.
Well, my dad is from Mexico and my mom's family's from Nigeria.
Nice.
So.
Nice. So you're doing the Black Lives Matter thing. Cool. No offense, it seems like all lives matter would be a better way to bring people together. Because Black lives aren't the only lives that matter, and it just seems like you're saying your dad's family matters less than your mom's. You know what I mean?
May I? So, I didn't fully get Black Lives Matter at first either, but I read this piece online that really helped me. So, saying all lives matter is like the fire department showing up at your house when it's burning down and spraying down the house across the street instead of yours because all houses matter.
Exactly. Like, of course, all houses do matter, and we're not saying that they don't, but right now we're focused on this one particular house because there's a freaking fire.
And I hear the you don't match your name thing a lot. It's insensitive and actually pretty offensive. You're making a lot of assumptions about what someone with Latino heritage should look like, and they're wrong.
Oh. I'm sorry I did that. Can we talk about this fire analogy, though? I just don't totally agree. But I want to understand.
Actually, if I'm going to put off studying, I want to go to the meeting. How about talk it through with Madison some other time?
Yeah, okay. Totally.
Okay, that went better. Madison checked with me. I got Jeff to work out his own stuff on his own time. I was able to go to the meeting and come back and study.
I thought it would stop when I got there. I thought it was just some that, I don't know, maybe the DOD required. I didn't know, but as I got to the academy, it was pretty evident that the training was going to keep coming on.
A cadet-specific role, and so there's different ropes that they'll wear on top of their uniform, on like over their shoulders. So if someone's wearing a purple rope, then you know they are a diversity and inclusion officer, and so they're always there kind of monitoring you. And I think it actually makes some people feel very uneasy because if they're outwardly like projecting that that's what they believe, then you're like, oh, maybe I can't say what I believe because there's a purple rope right there, and it honestly feels more divisive than unifying because now it's like people are broken up into even more groups, and like I don't feel like I I'm not a part of the Purple Rope group, so then it's like, so they don't have authority over me in a squadron way, but if I step out in a diversity way, then they're supposed to step in and correct my actions.
And there's no standardization of what constitutes a step out of line. So they could very well just walk up to you one day and start putting you in check for God knows what.
I think as soon as I make anyone feel uncomfortable, then, and if they say I'm making them feel uncomfortable because I'm not being diverse or inclusive, then that someone could report to the Purple Rope, and then the Purple Rope would come after me.
A lot of these discussions are based around diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's been so many of them. There's a lot of examples, but one of the big ones is it actually went public last year, was the don't say mom and dad thing. The academy said, oh, no, we're just trying to be inclusive language. It's like, no, then why did you teach it like that, I mean, everyone at the bottom line has a mother and a father. That's just how biology works, and the academy didn't mention that, but it's true. All this training that they're teaching us with diversity, equity, inclusion can be simplified down into one simple sentence. It's just be respectful of people. That's it. And as future officers, we need to be respectful of people, and 99% of the people at the academy are already able to do that.
Meanwhile, you've got, for example, the DoD Schools Chief Diversity Officer, which I'm not even sure why we have that in the first place, right? You should go train people to kill people and blow things up. That's what a military is supposed to do. Tweeted, quote, I'm so exhausted at these white folks in these PD, that's short for professional development, sessions. This lady actually had the caudacity to say that black people can be racist too. I had to stop the session and give Karen the business. We are not the majority. We don't have power, end quote. That's your Department of Defense Schools Chief Diversity Officer. Meanwhile, DoD spends $91,000 on diversity seminars for the Air Force band. This is what's happening in your Defense Department.
One of the things that was brought to me was a lecture that was being given at West Point titled How to Understand Your Whiteness and White Rage. I've ordered men to literally charge a machine gun. I can't imagine, if I have a white Green Beret and a black Green Beret, one saying, well, should I go? Should I take the lead because of my privilege and the guilt I feel? And another one questioning, well, is Major Walsh ordering me to do that because I'm African American and because of his inherent bias? You're infusing into what should be a cohesive unit all of this kind of doubt about our civilian institutions, doubt about each other, questioning of each other's motivation, seeing each other through the lens of our differences. And this is in a institution where race, religion, socioeconomic background should not and does not matter.
It feels like the academy is kind of being pushed by the cultural norms of our society as a whole instead of remaining an apolitical institution and focusing on the values and virtues that the military are specifically strong in. So it does feel like the academy as a whole is under attack from all of those ideologies as well. I do know a lot of people who have decided to leave, some because some it's just not for them, that makes sense, but others they just were shocked by what the academy had become, and it's, you hear a lot of people say it's not the same Air Force I used to serve in, and so I think there's definitely been a big change in what they focus on what they focus on.
So while the Pentagon, the CIA, and our military academies prioritize wokeness, the lifeblood of America's military institutions is eroding at historic rates, and that's recruitment.
The Army is expected to be about 15,000 recruits short of its 2023 goal. The Navy projects it will fall 10,000 short, and the Air Force 3,000 recruits below its goal.
Meanwhile, the United States military is set to enter 2024 with the smallest military force in more than 80 years, down nearly 64,000 personnel in the last 3 years alone.
Big bonuses, loosened enlistment requirements, and new advertising slogans did not push the services out of their slumps.
How did the same group of quote-unquote deep state bureaucrats that swindled Harry Harrison into flying a Black Lives Matter banner on a U.S. embassy, the same group that called for the renaming of historic military bases, and the same group that policed the halls of West Point with purple ropes to make sure cadets are using the quote-unquote correct pronouns. Just how exactly did they respond to this recruiting crisis?
Being queer, being non-binary, someone such as myself on a regular gets stared at.
I'm at the top of my game. I'm right up there with the big dogs. Girls, come on. Leave the saving the world to the men.
Active duty yeoman second class Joshua Kelly doubles as drag queen Harpy Daniels and now is the face of the Navy's recruitment drive as a digital ambassador.
Recruitment is an area where wokeness has been tried and looks like it's failing.
The latest, episode is the Navy, hiring a sailor to go out who's a transgender individual with the name, I don't know, Harpy Daniels or something. I don't even know what it was. Going out and doing recruiting videos. You're like, what are you doing? Like, this can't be real. But it is. It's real. It's not. You think, oh, wait, no, that's actually the Babylon Bee or that's the Onion or something. This isn't true. No, it's true. That's your military.
So a couple of years ago, you had the Army try this whole campaign, this woke campaign. So they featured all these, women, minorities, people with different sexual orientations. There was a lot of criticism about that whole campaign because it was, let's feature everyone but the white man.
General, do we have too many white officers in the Air Force?
Senator, what I really look at is the quality of all the officers that we have, and we look at the aspect of everyone who's qualified, meets the qualifications, is promoted. And
I would agree with you, but that answer is not consistent with your August 9th memo. In your August 9th memo, you said that you signed on to that there should be a reduction essentially of about 9% of the white officers. That's 5,400. We have 5,400, too many white officers.
Believe it or not, documents released by the Air Force in 2024 revealed that this was actually the military's goal, to achieve a reduced white male population in officer ranks, despite historically low recruitment. And this wasn't the first time Biden-Harris's top brass seemed to have tried to use race as a hatchet to cut down on white officers.
I've worked in the Pentagon, when a new defense secretary comes in, the first thing they send out sends a strong message in terms of guidance on what their priorities are. So here we have the first ever African-American Secretary of Defense, and the first thing he sends out is a memo on extremism, white extremism, orders a training stand down, not because planes are crashing, even though they are, because they're not being maintained, to deal with the overwhelming scourge of white supremacy within our military. Entire service, all of them, stand down to focus on this. Yet his own data and study a year later showed just 100 military members out of 2.5 million, 0.0004%, are participating in any form of extremism. We lost more people in the military in car accidents than are participating in extremism. But what message did that send? Right? It sent a message to all the generals, all the political leaders. That's what they need to focus on because that's the defense secretary's top priority.
My first tank gunner when I was a young lieutenant was a young man who was an immigrant to the United States. He was of Middle Eastern descent. I picked him to be my tank gunner, not because I wanted diversity in my tank. I picked him to be my tank gunner because I wanted to survive. Because I was deeply selfish. Like when we got into a firefight, I wanted to have a really good tank gunner, and he was that. He was a really good tank gunner and a good leader in his own right. When you begin to talk about groups inside an institution like the United States military, and so you talk about these anti-racist texts that are being put out at our military academies, or you begin to put diversity quotas in place, you have now undermined the very idea of, no, I want the best tank gunner. You have now walked away from the mission of the United States military to a mission that is a political agenda, and that is deeply dangerous.
We talk about leadership, which is so lacking in today's military. Robin Olds had just come back from Vietnam, handlebar mustache, the ultimate fighter pilot, maybe one of the greatest fighter pilots in the history of our military. And when he walked around, he had that stature, and he said every time he talked to us, The mission of the Air Force is to fly and fight, and don't you forget it. But again, he did everything, didn't expect anything from us he couldn't do. To me, that's leadership, and I'm just not sure that that character integrity is in a lot of the leadership in today's military.
Nobody in my Green Beret unit, when we were calling in air support, was asking what color the bomber pilot was. We just want the best pilot. We want the best cyber warrior. And that's the mentality we have to get back to.
Every one of us loves the Air Force Academy, West Point, Annapolis, and we constantly are getting accused of trying to damage those institutions. Nothing could be further from the truth. We think some of the leadership is damaging the institutions. And I just want to get it on the record. We all love our academies. We love our military. That's why we're doing what we're doing.
There is no blinking at the fact that our people, our territory, and our interests are in grave danger. With confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph, so help us God.
Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
Today, as 40 years ago, our armies are here for only one purpose: to protect and defend democracy. The only territories we hold are memorials like this one and graveyards where our heroes rest. We in America have learned bitter lessons from 2 world wars. It is better to be here ready to protect the peace than to take blind shelter across the sea, rushing to respond only after freedom is lost.
Parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We've seen war. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
The dignity and glory of the American warrior is recorded on the fields of battle and in acts of valor that will live for all of time